Good to see some folks joining. So we're going to leave some moments for everyone to join. I will introduce myself. My name is Julia Donatello. I am the Design Competitions and Events Manager at AIGA, and I'm here in good company with the jurors of this year's competition, 50/50. In a moment, we're going to hear more about them, their introductions about their background, their career, and also how they perceive their participation as a juror this year. So as we start, I would love to hear some of the participants. Where are you tuning from? I am based in New York, so I can start.
Do you want me to go next, Julia?
Yes, please, JP. Yes.
Okay, my name is JP Haney, and I'm this year's jury chair for 50 Books, 50 Covers. I was on the jury last year. A little bit about me. I'm based in Provo, Utah. It's a small college town, about 45 minutes from Salt Lake City, just like 12 minutes from Sundance Ski Resort, if you're familiar with that. And I run a graphic design studio um, and publisher and bookstore called Actual Source. I have a partner. His name's Davis Narupe, and we're celebrating our 10th year this year. And we primarily focus on visual identity, book design, and when we publish as an extension of our studio, we are typically also designing uh, the publications. And as a bookstore, we carry hundreds of titles, some design related, some not, that we curate and have here at our studio. And that's just a little bit about sort of where my background and as a jury member.
Awesome. Thanks, JP. I see here some folks joining from Lishan from Providence, Inês from Portugal, Tulio from Brazil, Aide from Florida, Gazal and Gabriela, if you want to also share where you. There is Marcy joining from Vegas here.
Yeah, I can go next. I'm Gabi. I live in New York now, and I'm currently lead visual design. I lead visual design at Google Seed Studio, which is basically a studio where we work on a lot of future vision work. We help material design, push the visual design system. We work on watch faces and different projects within the Google hardware org. And I'm originally from Brazil. Previously, I was an art director at YouTube Music. In Brazil, I co-founded Studio Barca. Worked in a lot of different places with branding, advertising, and research companies. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. That's it.
Great.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Gazal Fortan. I'm originally from Iran. I was born and raised in Tehran. And I moved to the US in 2018 for my MFA in graphic design. And I've been living in the US kind of all over since then. But right now I'm in Orange County, California, which is the southern parts of Los Angeles. And I am an assistant professor at Cal State San Marcos, and I teach graphic design here. I started in fall, but I also do my own practice. Just started my own studio called Pile, which I do a lot of projects with that are more cultural and connected to Iranians and Persians. And also I do a lot of passion projects just about women's right and feminism. But yeah, that's it. Oh, and I've been involved with AIGA for as long as I know. So I've been involved in AIGA Atlanta for a while, Los Angeles for a while, and now I'm really happy to be the jury on this competition. It's it's something that I've always wanted to be a juror. So we'll see.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing a little bit of your intros. I will make sure to share everyone's names and faces here. There are some participant jury team that could not join today, but they will be part of the whole process. So we have also here Caroline Thomas, Hassan Rahim, and Scott van der Zee that will also join the whole competition jury team. So I think to kickstart, I will see if some of the participants in the call have any questions that they would already like to share. If not, we can move forward with some of the questions I have to share. Let's see if someone has anything yet. Okay, I think I can start and let people think a little bit of their questions. Um, so to you three, if I think it was great to hear a little bit of your background, your career journey so far. I'm curious to learn more of why did you feel like engaging, participating as a juror this year in the 50-50, 50 books, 50 covers competition? And JP, in your case, why again?
Why again? Yeah, I can start by answering.
Yeah.
So book design is I think a really special discipline. It's not something that is emphasized necessarily in education. Um, at least in my education, there were no book design courses at all. It's something that if you're interested in it, you really have to teach yourself, or if you maybe you have a mentor who teaches you the ins and outs of design and production, or you're really reading books from previous practitioners to help you understand the process. And I think anyone who's deeply interested in book design now, who is doing their best to make a beautiful object and are worried about materiality and who are concerning themselves with paper and typesetting and a high level of craft, I think they should be celebrated and perhaps win awards. And I think it's a nice thing. I think in the United States, this is the competition to do that. So it seems like a great opportunity to hopefully get more people involved and bring the conversation forward a bit.
Great. Thanks.
I guess from my end, book design covers were my entry drug into design. I didn't know what design was, and I remember just asking what what do I have to study or what profession would design book covers, and that's how uh, I got into this. And weirdly, I didn't go into book design, but this is still a source of inspiration. Like whenever walking around, I always see like a bookshop. I want to go back there and see what's new. But also on a personal level, working in tech, I feel there are a lot of um, problems that we solve and other problems that we don't really need to solve and people are solving anyway. And I think that there was a time, especially when I was graduating or around college, that there was this big problem solving around, okay, how will reading work in on screens. And although there were a lot of different solutions that I liked, I never fully adapt to it. And I still prefer actual books, even if they get destroyed when I take them on vacations. I still feel this is a time to disconnect and actually pay attention to what I'm doing, and yeah, just love it.
Great, thanks.
And for me, I've always my father is a designer and an artist. So I grew up surrounded by his books and he would always it was his precious belonging, so he would always bring his books down from the shelves and be like, be careful when you're going through the pages. So I've always treated books as a piece of art for learning from him just and all those books that he always had, I was like, one day I'll own those books. Like he will give those books to me one day, and it doesn't matter how many times I went through it, I still would get super excited when he let me look at those books and go through them. They were all like design advertisement books that he brought with him from abroad just for inspiration for his work. And that's I feel like that is when I started loving books. And as you can see, like I have a whole library of books and trying to build up my library always. I see them as a piece of art, the feeling, the smell, all of it. I grew up with it and I always appreciated books more than anything. I feel like whatever that you can touch and feel, that's another level. I know we live on our screens now, but it's just I feel like it's a form of art that is inevitable and is just undeniable. So I feel like just being on the juror for this competition, and being able to bring a little bit more attention to some of the artworks that people are doing would be an amazing opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Almost as if it's a family treasure in your case, right? Like so participating speaks a lot about your personal journey. That's beautiful.
That's
Great.
true.
Thanks for sharing. So there are some questions here in the chat. Um, so first, Aide has asked, are there any specific design trends that you've noticed emerging in book designs in 2024 or in general um, that you can share or you have noticed so far? And while you think about it, I'll answer the next question from Marcy. Marcy is asking, on average, how many books are entered in the contest? So it's around 500 entries every year. Some years, last year we had 542. The year before, a little bit less. The year before, more than that. So it varies around 500. And just to also clarify, for this competition specifically, we award 100 entries, being 50 covers and 50 books.
Uh, on the
Yes.
trend question, and I'm not sure if this is true, but just from my personal observations, I think book covers kind of function like posters. So other trends, kind of like when it comes to visual trends and things that are trendy, then you'll see a variety of stuff. But one thing that I think that are specific to books, um, I think they got simpler, or I'm not sure if this is uh, just in the place around the places that I buy books, but I have noticed that they are simpler in the sense of less elements on the screen, um, and my take on this is that probably either on the shelves or on the Amazon shelves, they get more attention for that. But yeah, that's a trend I noticed. And recently, I also found it interesting that I have seen some very different covers that are almost like um, so simple that I could barely believe that they were selling at the store. And it made them more interesting, at least from a paying attention standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. This, how simple it is that calls our attention because it's so simple, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I feel
that's
like I
great.
definitely noticed that too. Um, the simple and the simple covers, maybe with a touch of surprise or something, but I've been seeing that a lot too.
Yeah, that's great. Um, do you have any other points to share, JP, on your take, or should we move forward with the other questions?
I think it's a tough one. I think I I do know that, at least from my side, it seems like um, maybe uh, people are getting better. Young people are becoming more interested in production and making things, physical things, and I think that's really great. So as far as like a visual trend, I think I think the simplicity idea is, um, there's definitely a, I have noticed a clarity, or like a there's not as much effect going on. I do think there's something, of course. The only thing we can do as designers is react, and I think, of course, things are have been for many years, a bit intense. Um, and I always react more to simplicity anyway. But no, I agree with what was said.
Great, thanks. There is a interesting question here from Parallel. Are there any trends or attributes that you used to hate that you now adore when it comes to book design? That's a good one. That's a good one.
I don't think I've changed my mind about things that I used to hate. Um, I think it's hard to focus on negative things about books, but I think it's really subjective, as you know, and that's why we have a broad we have a jury with that with very different people, and that helps make the best decision together as a group. Um, but I think things that really bother me are usually in the typesetting department, uh, and uh, of course, like my teacher's era, like pretty wide letting, and it's just a stylistic choice that things that I respond negatively to. But I don't think I think I'm just getting deeper into my opinions on those things.
I'm totally with you on the typesetting side. Um, whenever I buy a book, and this is mostly not for the covers, but inside, if I open it and I see that, I don't know, like how long would I usually take to read a book? It will probably be around like 2 weeks to a month, and then my life is gonna be miserable for that time because the type is terrible, and every time I look at it, I'm gonna have to squint my eyes or like think of how bad it is. And it's usually for me, it's the what makes or breaks. It's the spacing between the lines. and the spacing between the letters. And if it's bad, uh, I can deal with I can read different fonts and sure, but like the spacing really annoys me. Um, but for the covers, I think I'm more flexible. This on a personal level, but I think that like when it comes to like okay, we're judging books, uh, I really like to think what is the role of an award. And JP called out like people should be awarded for or called out for a great design, especially when it comes to books in this area. And also, we're kind of like 50 books, 50 covers is it's a it's a very important award, and it has been around for a long time. So like whenever people 20 years from now or 10 years from now come back to 2025 and see okay what were the books that were the best in class for design, that's also like it doesn't come down to our personal taste, but more like this stands out, and this is like the direction uh, the design's going in the in a good way.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of covered all the aspects, but I feel like one thing that it might be funny, but my mom's old books. She's a big reader. My dad and I are like more design artsy book, but she's like the reader. And I feel like some old covers, like really old covers that have been done like I don't know, like 30 years ago, and I used to cringe and when looking at him. Like now, maybe when I see my mom looking at those books again, I'm like, I don't know. I can see something interesting in those covers. So I kind of feel like it might have changed, especially with a lot of like older designs like coming back in fashion and also like an advertisement and all of that. But yeah, I totally agree with JB and Gabrielle on everything that they mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting how we might at times change our perception of books that we've known for such a long time. That's good take. Michelle has shared here a question. Production values are hard to fight for in most publishing houses. JP, have you noticed this from your experience in the competition?
So this is actually a topic. So you are definitely right. Production value is hard to fight for, and interesting choices you might want to make, are affected by the economy of the book, especially when you're working with trade publishers. Um, it's an interesting point, and I think something that am I want to talk to the team about is how do we actually it, last year being on the jury and judging everything digitally, it's actually very hard to tell what things feel like, and I want to try and figure out how we can get together in a room and at a certain point for a certain amount of finalists like judge uh, this important aspect of book design. I don't know how it's possible at this point, but I think it is. If it's not in person, we need to somehow. Some of us, I'm not sure, because I think my goal as part of this jury is to judge a book on its design system and its the 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 craft that was put into choosing materials, the entire object itself. It's an intimate way to engage with the subject, and each choice was made for a reason. And it's hard, especially texture. It's like you just can't really do that digitally. And of course, we all just do the best we can, and sometimes make concessions when we uh, print these things. But that's the goal always: try to make the best thing you can with the money you have. And sometimes that can be the thing that makes it great. Like, hey, I know this book was made for $2 a copy, but it's actually the decision making was so smart on how to do that that it deserves to be awarded or something. You know, I think even the awards can be given. Doesn't have to be expensive; just has to be interesting and work for the subject matter. So
And that's a good point, that the limitations on the process on how to evaluate the craft and the concrete material. Yeah, that's for sure a limitation. Yeah, that's a good point.
we're gonna have to talk about
James, yeah, let's talk about this. How we can better evaluate this year, taking that into account for sure. James has asked here a question relating to everyone's expressed love for the tactility of books here. I'm curious about how jurors deal with the very obvious challenge of judging books by the limited number of representative images and videos submitted, rather than holding the real objects in their hands and engaging with them physically. Yeah, that's the same point. Huh?
yeah, this is the follow up question,
Yeah.
and it is extremely difficult. You have to really try uh, very hard to and spend time with an entry. Whereas you by picking it up, you could tell immediately. It does actually take longer just when you spend time with an entry and you're squinting and seeing, trying to see what's going on with the binding and uh, yeah.
And also, like,
Listen, it's
oh,
a challenge.
sorry.
Go ahead.
And also recognizing that as designers, there's also this additional layer of talent and work, which is case studies, and the amount of work put into this can um, hopefully not in this competition, but usually it does make a lot of difference. But of course, we are trying to see beyond the specifics of the photos or case studies.
I think the nuance of a book, which can be everything, the subtlety is impossible to judge digitally.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we should really have everyone come together to see the books in person and enjoy looking at them physically, which I think is actually a big hobby of mine. Like that's what I enjoy doing, honestly, just going into bookstores and touching the books and feeling them and smelling and just looking at them. So I think it's just a matter of like, getting really deep and trying to imagine the best we can. But yeah, the experience of physical books is something else. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to see how we address this year. But these are very good points. Tulio has also shared what makes you say "whoa" on a good book cover design.
that might be too broad for me to answer. I think it's really it's different from book to book because sometimes the whoa could be like I think there was an entry last year and I can't remember what it was, but it was so simple, but it was just text that ran from the like around the spine to the cover. I wish I could remember what it was, but it was actually just really uh, well done, perfect composition. It just worked, you know. I think there's like this idea. Is it convincing? Is it you know is the presentation convincing? No matter if it's like a simple thing or a complicated thing, just has like a this yeah I it has that effect, but it's hard to say if it's not one thing. It's many things that it could be.
Yeah. Any other points that you, Gabriela and Gazal, want to share about your opinion on walls for good book cover?
I'm gonna I think I kind of mentioned it before, and I know it's a really hard question to answer, and I agree with everything JP just mentioned. Yes, the composition, the typography, all of that, but also I think the times that I've noticed myself go wow when I see a book has been usually the times that I saw something I didn't expect. So it was something out of the norm, or it was something that I couldn't even think of, but it turned out pretty good on a cover. So I think that it has usually been when I went wow on a book. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that although every medium has specifics to it, I like to think about it kind of agnostically. So probably the things that would make me go wow are probably the same things that would make me go wow in any other place. So the elements that Gazal called out are things are that would like the surprise element or the unexpected element would be interesting in any medium. I think that like I have seen a I had one experience before where I was, I don't know, trying to be to surprise myself, and I bought a book just by the cover, and I told myself I will not read anything about it because the cover, and it was a very there were no production costs, I imagine. Like uh there are books that, you know, with a lot of production you can um make them more interesting or catch your eye, but you cannot really um, fake good design just with production. And then this book specifically, it was just like a really well thought image, very intriguing image. Um, Weirdly, very small type, which is not usually what catches my eye. And I hated the book, but it made me buy it. So
Yeah, that's fun. Very cool, very cool. Um, Marcy has asked, now I think this is for JP because you've engaged in the process already last year. What merits, I think you can share a little bit of briefly, the merits that the books are judged by.
I think it can be quite individual for every juror, but for me personally, I'm looking for a considered, and I'm talking about the book, not the covers at this point, but the book the book design. I'm looking at book design system, that I can see like a clear thinking around uh, how each element is carried out and how it fits into a system. And I'm looking at decisions on functionality, for like what the book is for. Like I do take that into consideration. Like, is this a reader? Is it, so that means it needs to be small enough to hold?
Mm,
There's just like points about um, function that I think are need to be considered. And then because I think the book is the most complete, one of the most complete, maybe besides a building, um, complete wholes of a of design system that fits together. You have a you have cover, you have end sheets, you have various paper stocks inside that you can change texture and materiality. You have ink and choices that you make with color. Is it, is it fluorescent? Is it black? What type of black? There's there's all these things that have to work in concert, and I'm looking for those things. And then on a level of craft, and going back to what Ghazal said, like things that are unexpected are definitely welcomed and awarded. Pushing a format forward, I think, is interesting. Um, well executed design, typographic systems uh, are difficult to do over a 300 plus page book or whatever it is like that, you know. So these are things that I'm looking at and that I care about, and I know that other people have other emphasis they're looking at. um, so but for me that's my focus. And as far as the covers go, there's also, yeah, I think, what is the what is the book about, what and how is does the cover have a utility, is it working to describe or help me understand what the book is. And then there's a purely formal aspect, which is, do I respond to it. And I would say probably in book cover design there's maybe more of, there's a lot of trends actually. You can kind of see them, like for a long time, like everything was hand drawn, or like, you know,
Mhm.
there's just things that you notice. And I think in that category specifically, I'm looking for, going back to what Gazal said, something interesting, surprising, like stuff I've never seen before.
That's great. Gabriela and Gazal, if you have anything to add in terms of what are the criteria that you would use to evaluate a good book design?
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with everything that JP answered. It's so complete. I think that there are some stuff that I think uh, for for this forum is kind of basic. So, like for example, for sure, if the design makes sense, if it's the choices seem um, considerate and intentional, and every anomaly are also intentional, and that causing that surprise. But yeah, I think that like for this horror, I think it's about having something different and having a very smart, beautiful way to translate the story of the book.
Well
Yeah,
said.
and last thing, I just want to say all of the above. So everything everyone just mentioned, because it was very thorough. But I think the one last thing is that if I'm walking around Barnes and Noble or any other bookstore, and if I'm picking that book up, then I think that's one of the things. Like, because I'm always going for like, okay, let me just check this out, and no one comes to bookstores with me because I they take a long time. So yeah, I think if I pick it up, then yeah.
That's great. Great. Kim is asking specific about romance and historical books. So let's see. There seem to be specific trends in different genres. Is there a particular approach for romance and historical that you either like or dislike?
Hmm. I have no idea. I'm sorry to say. I'm not sure. It depends on the book, I think. I wish I could answer. I'm really not sure. Romance, I guess you probably want to do something that doesn't look like every other romance cover, but allows
Running away
different
from the
perspectives.
cliches a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think of any genre that probably has maybe the most defined cliche or set of visual tropes. So it's ripe for reimagining.
Sorry, I guess like what do you mean by historical, Kim?
I think that's, yeah. If you want to clarify here, is it more history books or is it fiction? Maybe we move forward and then whenever they answer, we can get back to this.
Yeah, I just
Um,
sorry, I just
yes,
said something. I might be assuming what you mean by this, but yeah, coming back to the point on surprising elements and things that are out of norm in a good way. I remember this version of the Cameron from by an a publisher that doesn't even exist anymore, called Kozak Naif. And Julia, you probably remember this publisher, and
Yeah.
had a very they had love for books, and they had love for making the best out of it. They invested a lot on production, and uh, unfortunately, that ended the company because they were spending too much on production. Um, but I will send a link here for everyone, because I think this is a historical. Uh, I guess you could call it historical, and use it does use historical elements like the illustration and the type, but it does in a way that, at least at the time, it felt very new and uh, appealing to me. And it made, like, not only the cover felt beautiful, it was fabric and it had gold and everything else, but also the inside of it was really fun to read. Um, and I think that's a way that is not just like blowing up everything and blowing up the story of the book and just going for trendy and new stuff that uh make no sense, but actually looking at the cover and uh, doing a modern interpretation of it.
Yeah, that's a good example. Good times.
I've been
Kim,
read in the chat
yeah.
that my volume might be low. Is that true?
I'm listening all right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not that I know
I'm
how to
not.
fix it if it is. I'm sorry if
Yeah, no, I'm listening all right. Kim responded to our follow-up question. So they mean novels dealing with times earlier than this century. So many historical fiction books seem to have similar trends in covers, seeing someone from behind with some
I think
Yeah, I don't know if that helps to give some
well
more examples on these genres or
I think there just to kind of quickly answer, I think we're always kind of dealing with vernacular, and sometimes with historical books, people and myself included like to engage with the design of that time. I think that maybe that you're asking about, like, I hope I'm interpreting that correctly. Um, uh, and I think there's ways of dealing with that that are interesting and just kind of boil down to personal taste. But yeah, I would say any run away from any trend really. Try to find your own reason for doing something that's not based on current design and more based on like a concept or research or I mean, design can be anything, and we need to narrow things down. So, finding reasons to do something is a, a must. And I think the best reason to do something is should be based on uh, a specific reason for that project, and not necessarily for the broader category. But I agree, these things are interesting to deal with, and can be difficult to navigate, especially when you're being commissioned by someone.
yeah, that's true. So Ines has also shared something very in line with what Gabriela said earlier. In book design, covers often get the spotlight, but the interior layout is just as critical for readability and reader experience. How do the winning books stand out for their interior design choices? So I think before I open up for the jurors to share, Ines, I think I'll share a little bit of my thought on this. Last year's competition, we had 3 categories. So we had book, cover, and the third one is book and cover. uh, based on JP's feedback of someone that has been through the process, he shared that we should only have two categories this year: book and cover. And by book, we are also evaluating, assessing the cover itself. So I think that's a good point when it comes to how much the interior is relevant, but also how much they're speaking with the cover itself. So if that book specifically, if the designers understand that the main aspect is only the cover and therefore that's what it should be assessed, that's the category that should be chosen. If you're analyzing the book on its whole, like, so we can actually understand the relationship between the interior aspect, the interior part, and the book as well, and how much they're in conversation, then that's the second category. And then I think, yeah, JP, if you want to share a little bit of your thoughts on why you suggested this change in terms of the categories.
Yeah, because I think the book design category, not the cover, but the whole needs to be considered. So I think we felt like the book and cover was sort of redundant, and we were kind of like trying to fill that category, but really it's kind of boiled down to like it needed to be in the book design category. And then in addition, a lot of times, a book cover designer doesn't have say over what the interior of the book looks like. The publisher might have an in-house style and a totally different set of rules for how that looks. So it's actually hard to judge that. And and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the cover category, it is usually um, it's not narrowed to this, but there are a large amount of um, submissions that are for like novels and bookstore, like book cover, that type of book cover. So it's actually hard for that kind of category to have the interior considered
Mm,
when other people are most likely doing the typesetting.
yeah. Mark's question, since Robert Bringhurst's book, The Elements of Typographic Style, super succeeded the Chicago Manual style as the typesetting Bible, have you increasingly noticed his influence in younger designers? Is there a more recent type guide you found that has extended his influence?
Um, I have not noticed it in younger designers. I wish I did. Um, and actually, that book is out of print. And we've actually been trying to get in touch with the publisher so that we could take over the publishing. But I think it is I think it is the book to read. It allows other typographic books, for example, like Jan Tischold's writings are very dogmatic about what you should and shouldn't do, and I think Bringhurst allows for more flexibility. Um, there are other books that I also love, which are Joost Hochuli's book, Details in Typography, which is a smaller volume that is just an easier read. And I really trust him and his way of working. Of course, in school we learned thinking with type, Ellen Lupton, but Bringhurst in general, I think is a is for me the resource for that. I really respect him. I don't know if young designers are reading that. I don't know. I hope so. Good question.
Yeah, I
I think
actually.
Gazal can. Oh, yeah, yeah, Gabriela, please go ahead.
Oh, I actually didn't know that the Chicago Manual of Style was more of a bestseller than Elements of Typographic Style, because Elements was my go-to. And yeah, I think about like Ellen Lupton's one like as a more like entry point getaway drug than
Mhm.
go to Elements of Typographic Style. But I would say at least in my education, and the people that I know, I found type as a very, very overlooked subject in design school. And most of people that I know uh, would either not learn it at all or have 3, 6 classes on it. And then if you want to learn about it, then they would have to, in the US, go to a very expensive program. Um, in Europe, a little less. In Latin America, some. But it, it is very tough. And nothing taught me more as a designer than type design. It is so different to learn calligraphy and type design than actually just reading elements of typographic style. Even if you're not going to be a type designer, it is really something that made my skill set as a designer much, much better. So, yeah, I would say download RoboFont and try to
Mhm.
do some stuff in there, because even if it sucks, because uh, it will teach you so much.
Um, I think I feel like as an educator right now also it's so hard to get students to read a typography book, and I have to trick them into reading some and be like, just read these 3 pages and we'll do this, just trying to find fun ways to kind of incorporate a lot of that into the class. And I wish there was easier way for me to get them to read it, but I feel like it has been, even in my grad school, like the first books that we were introduced to where was Ellen Lipton's books. So I think, and that has been something that I've also been trying to get my students to read. I think one of the reasons is because it's an easier read, and with the more visuals that it has, it just got updated again this year. So I feel like it has been one of the go-to books, and it's easier for everyone in school to get their hands on and read. So I think that was a good start. But I would definitely, now that you mention it, I want to definitely try to incorporate a little bit more of that um, into my classes. But yeah, I feel like, and I wasn't taught Latin typography, and as someone whose first language is Persian, so it was something that I learned later in my career. But I feel like one of the and talking about inside of the books, one of the first books I read when I came to America was The Designer As, and it's by, and I was trying to find it in my library so I can read it and be sure I'm mentioning everyone's names right. It's by Stephen McCarthy. um, and it was something that we had a class on for our grad school. But one more interesting thing, not but besides the content of the book, was the typography inside, which was done by Martin Wineski. And his way of typography and typesetting and is made me read the whole book, because I feel like I have a short span of attention. It's hard for me to like sit down and read a thicker book. Like if it's an easier, smaller book, like I'm through it and it's fun. It has design elements, like I love it, and I'll go through it faster. But when it's bigger, it takes me a little longer. So I have to like convince myself, like, you love this, learn it, read it. But his typesetting and his layouts was so interesting that it made me read the whole book. So if you haven't checked it out, yeah, I'm a big Martin Mineski's fan when it comes to typography, no, for the layouts of the inside pages.
Beautiful. Wow, the beauty of a good type, no? What it's possible,
You never
what it
know,
can do. Yeah,
yeah, what it does to
that's
you.
great. Yeah, exactly. Well, we are almost on time. I wanted to ask one quick question just to wrap up. And as we're talking about book design, I would like to ask each of you if you have at least one or two favorite books that you want to share when it comes to book design, book or cover?
Mm. One of my favorite books is designed by Our Polite Society, and it's called 11 by 17. And that was a book that early on when I was a young designer, I always saw online. It's an older book now, and I thought it was really visually arresting online. But then as soon as I saw it in person, like the level of detail and like the paper changes and the binding and the way it works is really really impressive. And that was a big it one that one was a big one for me just as a young designer, and I still look to it as an example.
Great. Do you have one that you guys want to share?
This is a really hard decision.
Or maybe if,
It's
yeah, it's
it's so
not the
hard.
one, but one that comes to your mind that you appreciate. Maybe it's not the favorite.
Yeah. I was just looking at my books and I was like, well, I gotta pick one. I love them all. But again, like going back to the element of surprise, and this is an older book, but I'm just gonna show it. Like one of the ones that just we got good typography and that one element again. So I think this was one of my favorite ones always. One of the books that made me pick it up because of the cover and then love the inside. So I think that this is one of mine. It's Dangerous Ideas in the Business of Life, James Victor.
Great, thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Gazal.
Um, so my favorite book cover, that's for sure not my favorite book cover. I cannot really pick one, but I will say I love, like most people, I love Paul Sar's designs, and I think when he did the Clarice Lispector complete stories, I was amazed because in Brazil we have a lot of Clarice Lispector books out there, and they're usually the best sellers, but they are not as interesting. And I also had a lot of Clarice Lispector books that I didn't like the cover. Uh, so to see that there was, I think it's still beautiful, and I think it's quite old. I'm not sure when that was launched, but that was a long time ago. Let me send a link here. Still great.
Great. Well, I do want to share the last note that the deadline has been extended until March 9th. Don't miss out, submit your work. I want to thank very much JP, Gazal, and Gabriela for your time and for sharing all your thoughts and your knowledge and inspirations here. I think it was very valuable, not only for me, but for, I'm sure, for all the participants. So thank you very much, and I hope to see everyone's job or work projects submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye bye.